Almost everything you know about him is wrong.
He didn't sell one painting in his life. He sold at least 2. He didn't die unknown either.
A critic had already published a long essay on his work in a Paris magazine months before the end. He wasn't a starving artist. His brother sent him money every month, and in the early years it was roughly double what a factory hand earned to feed a family of 7. And the year? Serious historians still argue about how much of it actually came off and about who did it. The man is real. Almost everything stacked on top of him got built after he died out of his own private letters by someone whose name you probably don't know. Vincent van Gogh. He was born on the 30th of March 1853 in Zundert, a village in the southern Netherlands, the eldest of 6 children in a parsonage where his father was the minister. And in the churchyard beside the house stood a small grave with his own name cut into it. Vincent Willem van Gogh. Born and died on the 30th of March 1852. 1 year to the day before him. His parents gave the second son the first son's name, and the parish register handed him the dead child's number as well. 29. Now you'll hear that this haunted him. That he grew up in a dead boy's shadow and never got out. That's a theory from psychoanalysts writing a century later. What he actually left us is one mention. A single letter at 24 to a grieving father who just buried his daughter. He'd stood in the cemetery at Zundert one morning, he wrote, beside the little grave, and read the words carved on it. "Suffer the little children to come unto me." That's the whole record. The people who look after that churchyard today will tell you it meant little to him. It was where he played as a boy. He didn't start out as a painter. He started out selling paintings. At 16, in the summer of 1869, he went to work for Goupil and Company, one of the largest art dealerships in Europe at their branch in The Hague. He was good enough that they moved him to London at 20. This is the part the legend leaves out. Before he ever took himself seriously with a brush, he spent 7 years inside the art business learning what sold, what didn't, and why. He understood exactly how the machine worked. The machine just didn't like him. His manager in London, Charles Auvers, started out fond of him. Weekend trips. Christmas with the family. It curdled. Van Gogh turned out to be an awkward employee with no tact and no gift for customers, so they shipped him to Paris and shipped him again, and in January 1876 they let him go. He was 22. He'd never hold a steady job in the art world again. In January 1879 he took a post as a lay preacher in the Borinage, a coal mining district in Belgium, among people who went into the earth before dawn and came back up black. He didn't preach at them. He tried to become one of them. He gave up his comfortable lodgings at the bakery to a homeless man, moved into a hut, slept on straw, and handed out most of what he owned. The miners started calling him the Christ of the coal mine. His employers were horrified. 6 months later the church got rid of him, and the reason they put on it was that he was undermining the dignity of the priesthood. He was 26, unemployed, unemployable, and finished with the church. And it's from the bottom of the year that he wrote the truest line anybody ever wrote about him. "Someone has a great fire in his soul," he told his brother, "and nobody ever comes to warm themselves at it, and passers-by see nothing but a little smoke at the top of the chimney, and then go on their way." He was 27 when he decided to become an artist, which by any sane measure was far too late. He had no training. He had no money. What he had was Theo. Theo van Gogh was 4 years younger, worked for the same firm that had fired his brother, and was extremely good at it. From the winter of 1880 onward he sent Vincent paint, canvas, and cashed every month for the rest of Vincent's life. Here's where the starving artist dies. In the early years that money ran between 100 and 150 francs a month. A Dutch factory worker was feeding a family of 7 on about 32 guilders. Vincent was getting 50 to 75 for one man. His friend in Arles, the postman Joseph Roulin, supported a wife and 3 children on 135 francs. Vincent wasn't poor. He was funded. Across his working life Theo sent him somewhere near 17,500 francs, which came to roughly 40.5% of everything Theo ever earned. In February 1888 he got off a train at Arles in the south of France, and the light down there did something to him. He rented 4 rooms in a yellow house on the Place Lamartine, and he had a plan. He'd start a colony.
A studio of the South, a house full of painters working side by side. He wrote to everyone he knew. One came. Before that, in a single week that August, he painted 4 canvases of sunflowers in a vase to decorate the room he was keeping for his guests. He added 3 more that winter, 7 in all, and he described the later ones as absolutely equal and identical copies. Almost nobody knows these were his second run at the subject. The first, painted in Paris the year before, showed cut sunflowers laying on the ground dying. The guest arrived on the 23rd of October. Paul Gauguin. In 9 weeks under that roof, Van Gogh painted 36 canvases and Gauguin finished 21, and the 2 of them came apart at the seams. Here's what isn't in doubt. On the 23rd of December, 1888, after a bad argument, his left ear was cut off with a razor. He wrapped it in paper, walked into town, and handed it to a woman at a brothel. He was 35. Everything else is contested. Start with how much. For over a century, the story was the earlobe, based on what a fellow painter reported afterwards. Then in 2010, a researcher named Bernadette Murphy found a note folded inside a folder of scraps at the library in Berkeley. A drawing made in 1930 by Dr. Felix Ray, who treated the wound in Arles. 2 diagrams, a dotted line, and Ray's own words. The ear was cut off with a razor along the dotted line. Not the lobe. Nearly all of it. Then there's who. The standard account, and the museum's position, is that he did it to himself. But in 2009, 2 German historians, Hans Kaufmann and Rita Wildegans, published 10 years of work on the police reports and argued something else. Gauguin was a trained fencer. Gauguin owned swords. They think Gauguin did it in a fight and that both men buried it for life. Most specialists don't buy it, and one Gauguin scholar called it a phony controversy. But the 2 men who were there left an account with holes in it, and the holes are real. In May 1889, he committed himself voluntarily to an asylum at Saint-Remy de Provence and stayed about a year. Listen to what he wrote in his first week there, and the mad genius goes very quiet. I think I've done well to come here, he told Theo. I'm losing the vague dread, the fear of the thing. And then this. I can come to consider madness as being an illness like any other. Never, he wrote, had he been so tranquil. That June he painted the view from his window before sunrise. Except he didn't quite. He wasn't allowed to paint at night, so he did it in daylight from memory. The village underneath those stars isn't visible from the window at all. He put it there. The cypress stands closer than it really stood. The most famous night sky ever painted is one he assembled. What was actually wrong with him, nobody knows. In 2016, the museum that carries his name sat 35 psychiatrists, neurologists, and historians in a room to settle it. They couldn't agree. The most thorough modern study, out of Groningen in 2020, lands on bipolar disorder with borderline traits, alcohol, and severe depression at the end. Its lead author's verdict was blunt. We will never really know for sure. 2 things everybody knows about him, and both of them are shaky. The first. He only ever sold 1 painting. That's the Red Vineyard, bought by a Belgian painter called Anne Bock in Brussels in 1890 for 400 francs. Good story! Not the only sale. In 1964, an art historian turned up a letter Theo had written in October 1888 to dealers in London 15 months earlier. We have sent you the 2 pictures you have bought and duly paid for. A landscape by Corot and a self-portrait by V. Van Gogh. Documented. Paid. On paper. The museum goes further, pointing out that he traded work constantly for food, for supplies, and that by any ordinary meaning of the word he sold quite a lot. The second. He died unknown. In January 1890, a critic named Albert Aurier published an essay about him in the Mercure de France. Serious, admiring imprint. Van Gogh wrote back, embarrassed by it. I feel that you create colours with your words, he told him. I rediscover my canvases in your article, but better than they really are, richer, more significant. He wasn't famous, but he was seen, and he knew it while he was alive. On the 20th of May, 1890, he moved to Auvers, a village about 30 kilometers northwest of Paris, under the eye of a doctor named Paul Cachet. He had 70 days left. In those 70 days, he painted 74 canvases and 33 drawings. More than 1 painting a day every day for 10 straight weeks right up to the end. Nobody has ever satisfactorily explained it.
It is either the most productive run of any painter's life, or a man emptying himself out on purpose, and the honest answer is that we can't see inside it. In the last 4 weeks he made 13 enormous canvases in a strange stretched shape twice as wide as they were tall, as if the ordinary rectangle had stopped being big enough.
On the 27th of July, 1890, he went out after breakfast and didn't come back. He turned up at the inn around 9 at night, holding his stomach. He'd been shot.
He said he'd done it himself in a field.
He died about 30 hours later in the early morning of the 29th with Theo beside him.
Theo reported his last words.
La tristesse dure talges.
The sadness will last forever.
The local priest refused him funeral rites and wouldn't lend the hearse because the church counted suicide a sin.
So they buried him on the 30th without a service, laid out among his own canvases and yellow flowers, while the village argued about whether he'd really done it himself.
And that should be the end of it.
It isn't. In 2011, two biographers, Stephen Nafer and Gregory White Smith, argued he never shot himself at all.
There was a 16-year-old in Auvers that summer, René Secretan, who owned a malfunctioning revolver he picked up at a fair and who liked tormenting the strange painter.
Put a snake in his paint box once.
Their case is that the boy shot him by accident, and that Van Gogh took the blame to keep him out of trouble.
The gun was never found at the time. His easel and paints, which he carried everywhere, were never found either.
And in 2014, a forensic pathologist, Dr. Vincent van Gogh, read the wound and concluded that in all medical probability it was not self-inflicted.
The other side is just as heavy.
Gachet, who examined him, wrote suicide to Theo.
Gauguin's own memoir says he shot himself in the stomach. The gendarmes wrote down exactly what he told them. What I have done is nobody else's business. I am free to do what I like with my own body.
He tried to poison himself the year before.
Serious people, real evidence pointing both ways. It isn't settled, and anybody who tells you it is has something to sell you.
Theo didn't last 6 months.
He died in January 1891, and everything his brother had made, hundreds of paintings, the drawings, and every letter Vincent ever sent him, landed on a 28-year-old widow with a baby on her hip.
Johanna van Gogh-Bonger. Jo.
Nobody wanted the paintings. She kept them anyway, and then she did the thing that actually made him. She lent them out carefully, exhibition after exhibition, building the reputation while never letting go of the work.
And she sat down with a mountain of letters in her brother-in-law's handwriting and spent years ordering them, transcribing them, translating them.
She could have published in 1891. A dead painter, a severed ear, a gunshot in a wheat field, that book would have sold. She waited 23 years.
Publishing early, she said, would have been unfair to him.
It would create an interest in his persona before his work, the thing he gave his life to, was valued the way it deserved. Work first. Man second. The 3 volumes came out in 1914, and they handed the world a painter who could think, and argue, and doubt in his own voice. She guessed exactly what was coming, and it came anyway. People read the man. The persona swallowed the work. Nearly every myth in this video grew out of the book she published to stop it. 10 years of painting. Around 900 paintings, 1100 drawings, and he was dead at 37. The story you've heard isn't a lie. It's just more than he was. He wasn't a madman who got lucky with colour. He was a failed dealer and a failed preacher who knew the art trade from the inside and picked the hardest possible road through anyway, paid for by a brother who believed him and remembered because a widow refused to let him vanish. If this changed the picture for you, there's a whole shelf of these on the channel. And tell me below, honestly.
The wheat field, 1890.
Do you think he pulled the trigger?